First contact gone wrong, the Discovery Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Terra Nova, watching the distant stars through the main viewport. After 18 months of deep space exploration, her crew had discovered something remarkable. The ship's sensors had detected artificial structures around a distant red dwarf star, structures that could only mean one thing: intelligent alien life. Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's xenobiologist, approached the captain with his tablet displaying the sensor readings. His excitement was barely contained as he spoke. "Captain, the energy signatures are unlike anything we've seen before. These structures are massive, each one larger than our biggest space stations. The technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours." Lieutenant Rosa Martinez looked up from her tactical station, her expression more cautious than excited. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships in that system. Very large ships. If they're hostile, we wouldn't stand a chance in a direct confrontation." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. She had been exploring space for over 20 years, and she knew that first contact with an alien species could go either way. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, but the question remained: would these aliens be friends or enemies? Chief Engineer Tom Bradley's voice crackled through the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I've been monitoring their transmissions. The energy patterns suggest they have faster-than-light communication across multiple star systems. We're looking at a civilization that spans the galaxy." Sarah made her decision. "Set course for the edge of their system. We'll observe from a safe distance and try to establish peaceful contact." She turned to Dr. Webb. "Prepare the first contact protocols. We're about to make history." The Vorthek Empire, as the Terra Nova approached the alien system, the crew got their first clear look at the massive structures. Hundreds of warships surrounded artificial space station the size of a small moon. The ships were dark and angular, covered in weapon ports and energy projectors. Everything about their design suggested a military civilization. Dr. Webb was recording everything, his scientific mind fascinated by the alien technology. "Captain, their ships are using some kind of energy field for propulsion. No visible exhaust or reaction mass. The energy output readings are incredible." Lieutenant Martinez was less impressed and more worried. "Those aren't exploration vessels. Every ship I'm seeing is armed for war. Heavy weapons, thick armor plating, shield generators. This is a military fleet." Before Sarah could respond, their communication system activated. A deep, harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the territory of the Vorthek Empire. State your species and prepare for immediate boarding and inspection." Sarah stepped forward. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel Terra Nova. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with your people." A different voice responded, colder and more authoritative. "I am Supreme Commander Vextar of the 47th Conquest Fleet. Your primitive vessel will be seized, and your crew will be processed as new subjects of the Empire. Resistance will result in your destruction." The transmission ended abruptly. Sarah felt her heart racing. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. These aliens weren't interested in diplomacy or peaceful exchange. They saw humans as subjects to be conquered. Human ingenuity. Lieutenant Martinez turned to face the captain. "Ma'am, sensors show 12 of their ships moving to intercept us. Each one is at least 5 times our size. Our weapons wouldn't even scratch their hulls." Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. These were experienced space explorers who had volunteered for a dangerous mission far from home. They wouldn't give up without a fight. "Tom, how long would it take them to reach us?" Sarah asked through the intercom. "At their current speed, about 30 minutes, Captain. But our engines can't outrun them in open space." Dr. Webb was studying the alien fleet through the ship's telescopes. Captain, I'm noticing something interesting. Their ships move in perfect formation, very rigid and predictable. They seem to follow exact patterns. Sarah smiled. This was exactly the kind of observation that could save their lives. Rosa, can you plot their intercept course? Already done, Captain. They're approaching in a standard envelope formation, designed to prevent us from escaping in any direction. Sarah walked to the center of the bridge, her mind working through possibilities. The aliens expected them to behave like every other species they had conquered, probably fleeing in panic or surrendering immediately. But humans had survived on Earth by being unpredictable and creative. Tom, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. Can you overload our fusion reactor to create a controlled explosion? Tom's voice came back immediately. Captain, that would destroy the ship, not if we eject the reactor core first. I want you to set it to explode exactly 4 minutes after. Ejection. Can you do that? There was a pause. Yes, ma'am. But what's the plan? Sarah was already moving to her command chair. We're going to do something these aliens had never seen before. Rosa, plot a course directly toward their flagship. Maximum speed. Dr. Webb looked shocked. Captain, that's suicide. No, it's psychology. They expect us to run. When we charge their most powerful ship instead, they'll hesitate trying to figure out what we're planning. That hesitation will give us the opening we need. The impossible escape, the Terra Nova, accelerated toward the Vorthic fleet at maximum speed. On the alien flagship, Supreme Commander Vextar watched in confusion as the small human vessel raced directly toward his most powerful warship. Sir, the human vessel is on a collision course, his tactical officer reported. Should we destroy it? Vextar hesitated. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever charged directly at a Vorthic battle fleet. They always tried to run or hide. This behavior made no sense. Hold fire. I want to see what they're planning. On the Terra Nova, Sarah was counting down the seconds. Tom, eject the reactor core now. The ship shuddered as the fusion reactor was ejected from the rear of the vessel. To the Vorthic fleet, it looked like the human ship was having a mechanical failure. Rosa, emergency turn to starboard, full power. The Terra Nova suddenly veered away from the flagship, using the reactor ejection as an additional boost. The ship shot past the Vorthic formation at incredible speed, heading for the edge of the system. Supreme Commander Vextar realized he had been fooled. All ships pursue and destroy. But it was too late. The ejected reactor core exploded in a brilliant flash of nuclear fire right in the middle of the Vorthic formation. The explosion didn't damage their ships, but the intense electromagnetic pulse disrupted their sensors and communications for several crucial minutes. By the time the Vorthic fleet recovered, the Terra Nova was already approaching the edge of the system. Sarah had used their own rigid formations against them, creating confusion and buying precious time. The word spreads DR. Webb was monitoring Vorthic communications as they fled the system. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions across multiple frequencies. They're talking about us. What are they saying? They're confused. They keep referring to unpredictable behavior and illogical tactics. 1. Transmission mentioned that we fought without following proper patterns. Lieutenant Martinez was tracking their pursuit. Captain, they're following us, but they're maintaining formation instead of using maximum speed. It's like they're afraid we have another trick planned. Sarah smiled grimly. They did have another trick, in a way. They had something the Vorthic Empire had never encountered before: human unpredictability. For centuries, these aliens had conquered species that followed logical, predictable patterns. But humans had evolved through millions of years of surviving against impossible odds. as the Terra Nova jumped to faster-than-light speed. Heading back toward Earth, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The Vorthic Empire now knew that humanity existed, and they would come looking for Earth eventually. But they had also learned that humans were unlike any species they had encountered before. Tom's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, I've been thinking about what we observed back there. Their technology is advanced, but it's all standardized. Every ship identical, every formation the same. They've become so powerful that they've stopped innovating." Dr. Webb nodded in agreement. "It makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. When you're the dominant species in the galaxy, you stop adapting. But humans have never stopped adapting." Sarah looked out at the stars rushing past them as they traveled faster than light toward home. Earth would need to prepare for what was coming, but she was confident that humanity would find a way to survive. They always had. The Vorthic Empire controlled most of the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. But they had never faced a species that refused to follow the rules. They had never faced humans. Asterisk. The galaxy learns to fear humanity. The Empire's Confusion Supreme Commander, Vexstar, stood in the war room of the Vorthic Imperial Command, studying holographic displays showing the encounter with the human vessel. Around him, military advisors and scientists examined every detail of the engagement, trying to understand what had gone wrong. Admiral Zexthol, commander of the Empire's Outer Rim forces, activated another replay of the Terra Nova's escape. The humans used their own ship's reactor as a weapon. In 300 years of conquest, no species has ever weaponized their own critical systems. Their tactics made no logical sense, added Chief Strategist Morgan. They charged our flagship, then used mechanical failure as cover for escape. By all military doctrine, they should have attempted to flee immediately or requested terms of surrender. Vexstar's scaled face showed deep concern. The Vorthic Empire had conquered over 400 species across the galaxy. Every conquest had followed the same pattern: demonstrate overwhelming force, demand surrender, accept submission. Species that resisted were quickly crushed by superior technology and firepower. But these humans had introduced variables that the Empire's military computers couldn't process. They had acted without logic, used weakness as strength, and turned their limitations into advantages. "Send reconnaissance fleets to observe their home system," Vexstar ordered. "I want complete intelligence on this species before we proceed with conquest and activate our intelligence networks. I want to know if other species have heard about this encounter." Earth prepares 6 months after the Terra Nova's return to Earth. The planet was transformed. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the newly constructed Global Defense Command Center, watching displays that showed defensive preparations across the solar system. Commander Elena Vasquez, leader of Earth's hastily assembled defense force, approached. With the latest reports, "Captain, we've received confirmation that at least 20 alien probe ships have been detected at the edge of our system. They're watching us, studying our defenses." Sarah nodded. "What's our status?" "Better than I hoped. Dr. Webb's analysis of Vorthic technology has given us some insights. Their systems are powerful but standardized. Every ship uses the same shield frequencies, the same weapons configurations. They've been so successful that they've stopped innovating." Dr. Webb joined the conversation, carrying a tablet with his LAT East research. "I've been working with our engineers on what we're calling asymmetric warfare principles. We can't match their firepower, but we can be unpredictable. Every human ship will have different weapon configurations, different tactical systems." Chief Engineer Tom Bradley was coordinating the construction of Earth's defense fleet. Unlike the Vorthic Empire's identical warships, human vessels were deliberately varied. Some were fast scouts, others were heavily armed destroyers. Each ship was unique, designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. The most important development is the volunteer program, Elena reported. Word has spread through the underground networks of conquered species. We're receiving secret transmissions from resistance groups across the galaxy. Sarah was surprised. Other species want to help us? They want to help themselves. The Vorthic Empire has been oppressing hundreds of worlds for centuries. Our escape from their fleet has become a symbol. For the first time, someone has outmaneuvered the Empire. The alliance forms deep in the Kepler system. A secret meeting was taking place on an abandoned mining station. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered, all of them from worlds conquered by the Vorthic Empire. Zareth, a tall crystalline being from the Silex worlds, addressed the group. The humans have proven that the Vorthic can be defeated. Their rigid tactics can be overcome by creative thinking. Gorth, a massive creature from the industrial planet Tarvos, slammed his forearms on the table. My people have been slaves for 50 years. The Vorthic took our children, forced us to work in their factories. If the humans can fight back, so can we. Commander Elena Vasquez had arrived at the meeting in a cloaked human ship, representing Earth's interests. We're not asking you to start a war. We're offering to share our tactical knowledge and coordinate resistance efforts. A small insectoid being named Kliktar spoke up. The Empire expects conquered species to behave predictably. We follow their rules, work in their factories, serve their military. But what if we stopped following the rules? Elena smiled. That's exactly what we're proposing. Humans have never been good at following rules, especially rules imposed by bullies. Over the next several weeks, the secret alliance grew. Species that had been enemies before conquest began working together. The Silex provided advanced materials. The Tarvans offered industrial capacity, and smaller species contributed intelligence and sabotage skills. Asterisk, most importantly, they all learned from human tactics. Instead of traditional military formations, they began using guerrilla warfare, surprise attacks, and unconventional strategies that the Vorthic military computers couldn't predict. The Empire strikes. Baxome Commander Vextar had grown increasingly frustrated with the intelligence. Reports coming from human space. Instead of a primitive species cowering in fear, the humans were building a defense fleet and apparently communicating with resistance groups throughout the Empire. This ends now, Vextar declared to his assembled fleet commanders. We will demonstrate to the galaxy that rebellion against the Empire is futile. Prepare the Grand Fleet for immediate deployment to the human system. Admiral Zexthel reviewed the deployment orders. Sir, the Grand Fleet consists of over 2,000 warships. Isn't this excessive force for a single primitive species? Nothing about these humans is primitive, Vextar replied. They think differently than any species we've encountered. We will overwhelm them with such massive force that no other species will dare to resist. The Vorthic Grand Fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Each ship was identical, armed with the same weapons, protected by the same shields, following the same tactical protocols. It was a magnificent display of standardized military power. But as the fleet traveled toward human space, something unprecedented was happening throughout the galaxy. On conquered worlds, resistance groups were activating. Factories were being sabotaged, supply lines were being disrupted, and Vorthic officials were disappearing. The Empire's communication networks began, reporting coordinated uprisings on dozens of worlds simultaneously. For the first time in centuries, conquered species were fighting back using tactics the Empire couldn't counter. Asterisk, the battle for Earth's future. Vorthic Grand Fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system to find something they had never encountered before: organized chaos. Human ships were positioned throughout the system, but not in any recognizable formation. Some vessels were hidden behind asteroids. Others were disguised as space debris. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the flagship U's Defiance, watching the enemy fleet approach. All ships, remember the plan. We don't fight like they expect. We fight like humans. The battle began when a squadron of Vorthic destroyers moved to attack what appeared to be a human supply convoy. But the cargo ships suddenly revealed hidden weapons and began attacking from multiple directions. Simultaneously, the Vorthic ships, programmed to respond to traditional threat patterns, were confused by vessels that kept changing their apparent function. Dr. Webb, now serving as tactical advisor, had studied every detail of Vorthic military doctrine. There, ships are programmed to respond to specific threat classifications. But we keep changing classifications mid-battle. Their computers can't keep up. Asterisk, throughout the solar system, human ingenuity was on full display. Mining vessels were using their industrial equipment as weapons. Research stations were launching swarms of modified probes that interfered with Vorthic sensors. Even civilian ships were contributing by creating false signals and decoy formations. Most importantly, the Alliance species were providing support. Silex crystal ships appeared suddenly throughout the battle zone, their advanced materials allowing them to survive impacts that would destroy normal vessels. Tarvan heavy cruisers emerged from hyperspace at unexpected locations, using their industrial design to ram Vorthic ships. Victory through Unity Admiral Zexthol watched his fleet's formations fall apart as they tried to respond to threats. They kept changing and multiplying. Sir, we're receiving reports of ships that transform their weapon configurations during battle. Their tactics make no computational sense. Asterisk Supreme Commander Vextar realized that his empire's greatest strength had become its greatest weakness. Centuries of easy conquest had made them dependent on predictable patterns and standardized responses. They had forgotten how to adapt. Sir, we're receiving surrender requests, a communications officer reported. From the humans? Asterisk, no sir, from our own ships. Many of our commanders are requesting permission to withdraw. They report that they cannot effectively target enemies whose behavior they cannot predict. As the battle raged, news of the human resistance spread throughout the galaxy via hidden communication networks. Unconquered worlds, the site of the mighty Vorthic Grand Fleet, struggling against a supposedly primitive species, inspired massive uprisings. Asterisk. The final blow came when Captain Sarah Chun, commanding a squadron of modified exploration vessels, managed to penetrate the Grand Fleet's formation using tactics borrowed from her original escape. Her ships approached the Vorthic flagship while broadcasting false distress signals, then launched a coordinated attack on the ship's command systems. With their flagship damaged and their formations in chaos, the Vorthic Grand Fleet began to withdraw. For the first time in their history, the Empire had been defeated in open battle. The new galactic order in the aftermath of the battle, supreme. Commander Vextar found himself aboard a human vessel, negotiating terms of peace. Commander Elena Vasquez sat across from him, representing not just Earth, but the entire alliance of resistant species. Your empire is finished, Elena stated simply. Not because we destroyed your fleet, but because you taught the galaxy something important. Bullies can be beaten if people work together and refuse to follow the bully's rules. Vextar looked at the tactical displays showing uprisings on hundreds of worlds. You have destroyed centuries of order and stability. We've restored freedom and diversity, Sarah Chun corrected. Your empire created order by forcing everyone to think the same way, act the same way. But the universe is better when different species contribute their unique strengths. Dr. Webb added his perspective. From a scientific standpoint, your empire had stopped evolving. Humans and our allies represent genetic and cultural diversity. We adapt, we innovate, we find solutions you never considered. As the Vorthic forces retreated from human space, they left behind a transformed galaxy. The alliance of free worlds grew rapidly as liberated species chose cooperation over conquest. Humans became known throughout the galaxy not as the most powerful species, but as the species that taught others how to be free. The Vorthic Empire still existed, but it was no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. They had learned a painful lesson. Never underestimate a species that refuses to follow your rules, especially when that species has spent millions of years surviving by adapting to impossible challenges. Humanity had entered the galactic community, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through something far more powerful, the ability to inspire others to be their best selves. And throughout the galaxy, whenever oppressed species faced impossible odds, they remembered the lesson taught by a small blue planet at the edge of the Milky Way. Sometimes, the greatest victory comes not from being the strongest, but from refusing to give up and inspiring others to do the same.